You've both had to negotiate with Vladimir Putin, who does not strike me as the most people-friendly guy, let alone woman-friendly guy. What did you learn from that experience? What should we know about him as a person? And how are we doing in managing this crisis? Madam Secretary, would you begin?
Well, Tom, first, it's great to see you, and I'm thrilled to be back here at this wonderful conference. And I thank Tina and everybody who's put it together, and I'm especially pleased to be here with Christine Lagarde, who has just shown such great leadership, Ukraine being one example, but there are so many more through the International Monetary Fund. You know, we could be here till breakfast talking about what's going on with Russia, and in particular, what's going on with Vladimir Putin. So I'll try to be brief and just make a few points. Vladimir Putin, in my view, is motivated by the past. He wants to recreate it. He wants to reclaim it. He wants to restore what he views as the proper place of Russia in the world order. He is motivated by his looking back on history, going back to the czars. He has publicly said that the collapse of the Soviet Union was a great catastrophe. He believes that politics is a zero-sum game, which means that Russia can't do well with all of the great resources and assets Russia has, starting with its people, if other people are doing well, and therefore he wants to do what he can to elevate the Russian position, particularly in its neighborhood, among those countries that used to be part of the Soviet Union and or part of the Warsaw Pact. So what he seems now to be doing is looking for ways to score points at home, to build up his political base, relying on nationalism and the appeal to greater Russia, to avoid the kind of protests and demonstrations that were beginning to raise questions about his legitimacy, about the direction he was taking his country. So one of the surest ways of diverting attention is, you know, cause a ruckus somewhere else. He wants to stop the further Europeanization of those parts of Europe, particularly South and East, and he wants to try to create a competitor to the European Union, which he calls the Eurasian Unit, with countries like Belarus or Kazakhstan. And then, of course, there's the very personal feeling that Crimea was given away. Mm-hmm. So he has set about to redraw the boundaries of post-World War II Europe, something that we all thought were settled. Now, I really believe that over the long run, this is a losing strategy. But I think that the United States and our European allies, we have to be both strong and patient. We have to help to restore the opportunity of the Baltic nations, other Eastern European nations, to feel free from intimidation, and that is largely a question of both energy supplies and preventing the subversion of their democracies by influence peddling, if you will, starting from Moscow. And I think that this is a time for the West, led by the United States and international organizations like the IMF, to be very clear that the takeover of Crimea was illegal, illegitimate. The United Nations General Assembly has just overwhelmingly condemned it, that we need to be putting together both financial and technical assistance for Ukraine so that they can emerge from this crisis stronger and unified. And we have to play a long game ourselves. And part of our problem is we are a raucous democracy, as are our friends in Europe, and we're all still trying to get our budgetary houses in order. We're trying to set our own priorities for our own people. But we, like previous generations of leaders and citizens, have to say to ourselves, it's really important that we say no to somebody like Vladimir Putin, and that we do it in a smart way that makes him think twice about what he's trying to achieve.